Our top story tonight, some going down in November.
Wars, spending.
There has got to be something big a-brewing.
They're using geese to guard prisons in Brazil. Does Biden know what
Immigration
Mexico
policies.
is? Would you scare Joe Biden? What are we laughing at? I think
Butthole.
Billy Mays was real.
I'm a world-class skeptic.
I don't know anything about Hunter Biden. I don't know who's big into cocaine and laptops. Why is that our problem? Complete, absolute incompetence. Like, who funds the news? It's a freaking inside job, man. That the entire world's a stage and everything's fake.
Welcome back to another episode of the Veritas Road. Carson and John back in the studio with you folks on this delicious Thursday. Guys, a couple of things before we get going. Go ahead and tune in every Tuesday. We're live every Tuesday for Touch Me Tuesdays. If you haven't tuned into one of those, they're a good time. We talk about the things that touched me that week, and hopefully we can touch you too. Always fun. Always a blast. Go ahead and like and follow the stream. Share it with your friends. Share it with your family, but only if you hate them and don't want to talk to them again. But share it with people. Like and follow. Like us on the Twitter. Our channel just got just destroyed. We finally got final word from Twitter, 2 weeks ago, John?
Yeah.
Telling us that we're never getting our old account back. So like us on Twitter. Give us some love there. And last but not least, we have Tyler in the studio with us. Welcome, Tyler. If you want to check out the episodes we've done with him already, guys, go to the Patreon, which is live now. We just had our Patreon launch. So go there and sign up if you want the last episode we did with Tyler. It was an absolute banger. I feel like that sounds weird when I use words like banger. I don't feel like I'm allowed to use those. It was really good.
You're too old.
Yeah, I am too old for that shit.
Yeah, sorry.
So he was, as they say, spitting fire the whole time. So go check that out. It was really good. I even shared it with my grandmother figure at work, and she really enjoyed it. So go check that out on the Patreon. Tyler, welcome back, bud.
Thank you. Thanks for having me back, man.
Yeah.
Always an honor to be on here with you boys.
I'm excited. Typically, this is where we ask people to share their links or where to find them, but I don't know if you have anything out there. If you do, now's the time.
I'm a ghost. I don't have anything.
Okay,
Sorry.
I respect it. So we wanted to have you. So the last show we did, I don't even remember what we talked about that show. I know it was really good. We talked a lot about solo scriptura was one of the big things we talked about.
Yeah.
The whole idea of the Bible being the only source of truth, right?
Right.
But one of the things that I wanted to get into, and we won't pussyfoot around the topic too much tonight, because I feel like we're gonna I feel like this is going to get deep in the weeds and deep in the weeds fast. So
Yep.
I don't want to keep you folks up too late. One of the things that I feel like growing up in the religious world that was weirdly fundamentally kind of pushed aside was the whole idea of the problem of evil. It was one of those things where, maybe you're 5-year-old nephew or some kid at church, or maybe you're the kid at church. I was the kid at church who would ask, what's the deal? If God is this good, benevolent figure, why is evil a thing? And it's always, at least to me, brushed aside as this juvenile question. I was still asking that question even as a teenager and into college. And every time I would mention it, it feels like, and maybe this is me being an insecure, but it feels like it's kind of looked at as this juvenile, you don't have enough spiritual experience or expertise kind of question to tackle. But in my opinion, that is one of the deepest, most complex questions in the spiritual realm that a person can ask. And so it seems weird from the get-go that people treat it like such this fundamental thing. Well, evil exists because free will exists.
Right.
You stupid. Where did that come from?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's the number one topic I think that I won't say just explicitly atheists attack Christianity with, but anybody who's secular, in some regard, that's the number one thing that's the jugular for Christianity, if you will. Yeah. That they come at you with. They love to quote the Bible back at you and say, if God is all knowing, all loving, what's the third one?
All powerful.
all powerful, yeah, all that.
All benevolent.
All benevolent. If he created the earth and all that, then he had to either they go down the path of he created evil, or how could he let this happen? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then they love to turn it on you and say, because evil exists, therefore God created it or allowed it, he cannot be good.
Right.
That kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, all the arguments I've seen on it are like the whole idea of like if God is omniscient, omnipotent, and omnibenevolent. People always like to use those like 50-cent church words, which I absolutely despise.
Yeah,
like
tongue
those.
twisters.
Yeah, those are absolute. You're a if you use those words. That's all I have to say. Like those people are. Stop saying like nobody cares about your propitiation. Okay, take your butt plug out and move on. Quit using those 50-cent church words. I can't stand them.
Latin died like 500 years ago. Man.
Exactly.
Just let it go.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
And people love to use, but if he is like all powerful and like this benevolent, the word they use is omnibenevolent, which is just a ridiculous. He's very, very nice. Okay. He's good. If he is the essence of like good and love and yet also all powerful, it is a difficult question. Like, why does such a thing exist? And for me, like, I wonder, and I don't want to get too far off in the weeds on this, but like, I wonder if part of the reason people address that as such a fundamentally address it as like a fundamental question, like juvenile, something you should already like know and understand, is either because they have no clue themselves, and so it's much easier to just like pretend they understand, give you a simple answer like, oh, free will, and then move on. Right. Or if it is some part of, and we talked about a lot about this last time, so I don't want to spend too much time on this, but part of that, like some part of that system that's like directing people towards just kind of ignoring that issue. Yeah. You know?
I think a lot of that comes from, you throw out these catch-all words like omnibenevolent. I've actually never heard anybody say that, but I believe you that people have said that. It sounds like somebody.
I was a nerd, so I heard that a few times.
Well, I guess it wasn't. You got the PhD, I got the master's. But, you throw out these catch-all words, which, there's a prefix, there's a root, and then there's suffix. Like, there's a bunch of things going on in that word. You just throw it all out there. And then just move on, like you said. There's no nuance as far as breaking it down, what each one of those aspects of the words mean, right, where they come from, and how those words are grounded. Yeah. And so the grounding is something that I think you and I and John and anybody else who's of like mind is something that we're seeking. Right. When we're young and we're observant and we're paying attention and we're listening, we hear, some people just hear the scriptures, some people just hear the law, and then some people are looking at the grand meta-narrative that the Bible, the story of Christianity is painting for the believers to understand and to imbue upon themselves and become a part of. When you're paying attention, you can see that the things that are glossed over are not necessarily understood. Yeah. And to get to your point where you're talking about where, in the last podcast we talked about like where's the gap of knowledge come from, and so I think the first one is there's no, and at least in the Western church, there's very little, if not hardly any, understanding of the grounding of free will, where it comes from, why it's there, what that exactly means, and then also just a lack of theology as to why, kind of an answer as to why evil does exist. Yeah. And so you fall flat, you hit a dead end when you get there, and you just kind of like, and I think this is true, but an answer I got kind of a lot when I asked that question is you'll kind of understand as you get older and you mature.
Gosh, I hate that one.
You'll experience it and you'll realize like, yeah, this man is just fallen. It's just a fallen state of the world, and people are just going to do bad things and whatnot, and they just need the Lord. Yeah. But then you turn, you look, you see people who have the Lord, and they're doing bad things too. Right. So it's something that I think is an envelope that needs to be reopened again, and that's what we're doing here. So. Yeah. Yeah. No. And to your point, like you talked about the whole idea of like, where's the word grounded? Where are these concepts grounded? What do they really mean? And one of the first things I thought of as I was looking into this a little bit was the fact that like nobody's really taken the time to define terms around this thing. I've never taken the time to really define these terms. And so like the first thing you have to ask yourself is, well, what is evil? And I don't want us to get too off on the weeds to that, but I found this really interesting quote from C.S. Lewis. He said, if things can improve, that means there must be some absolute standard of good above
above and outside the cosmic process to which that process can approximate. There's no sense in talking of becoming better if better means simply what we are becoming. It's like congratulating yourself on reaching your destination and defining destination as the place you've reached. And so I think it's a very good way to articulate like how we can define evil from an objective perspective. This is one of those things that he talks a lot about in, I think it's like Mere Christianity. And I think another one's like The Problem of Pain. This whole idea that we all have above and beyond the like, science will tell you this alleged evolutionary moral compass that we've inherited as a result of trying to pass on our genes, things that are good for the populace,
Right.
All that stuff. We all have this moral compass that goes above and beyond that. This whole idea of like even a little white lie is still a lie. This whole idea of infidelity in a marriage is still bad, even if nobody finds out and gets hurt from it. Like these concepts that very clearly prove there's a moral objective outside the realm of physical reality that exists far beyond the reaches of, this, lamp that I can touch, this that I can, anyway, there's moral reality that exists far outside of that. And so, one of the points he goes on to make in that paper is the idea that it's kind of like the whole light and dark argument. Evil can't exist without good because evil is the perversion of that which is good. Evil is the co-opting of things that are good in order to make them bad.
Right.
And so I guess I'm interested to hear y'all's thoughts on that as we kind of unpack this, because I mean, for me, I think that's a pretty decent way to come at the whole topic is like evil can't exist. There has to be, like in the beginning, there has to be something. In that paper, he talks a lot about some of the Zoroastrian duality concepts between like their dual deities. And it's like, but what created those? What was the thing? The I am that I am. The creator. What's the term? The singularity. What was the thing that existed before these things? There has to be that thing, and that thing, I would argue, is the thing that gives us the moral. Anyway, I've gone on too long.
No.
What are y'all's thoughts on that?
No. John?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty logical argument. Evil can't exist without good. I don't think it works the complete other way around, though. But yeah, you have to have some type of
I would agree
objective
with that, yeah.
standard. It just has to be.
Yeah.
Otherwise, evil doesn't exist.
Right.
I think that it's as pretty simple as that.
Well, it sounds fundamental when you put it that way, but for me, I would argue it takes a good amount of thinking because these concepts are so fundamental to who we are. There are a lot of layers to unpack before you get down to like the meat of what's really going on. I think.
When I was going through my whole I'm falling away. I've spared the whole testimony. It's been there. Problem of evil was naturally the primary cause of that. And after having fallen away, coming back and, have faith again, really kind of reflecting on that, and I've been doing that for 7 years now, what I've kind of come to the conclusion of is that evil is kind of just the nominal term we throw out there to describe a metaphysical occurrence. And what I've read a lot about and the terminology I've kind of concluded is the most accurate is that evil is a privation. It's an absence, like you said, it's basically a fancy way of saying an absence of good. But I think the correct terminology is, and this is technically biblical, but also traditional for the church, going back 2,000 years and even into Hebrew theology, which is kind of all over the place, but God is righteous.
Yeah.
There's not like good and bad is a term that we use, is a simplistic term we use to determine if we want to head in a certain direction.
Yeah.
But God is righteous. He does what is best for his creation, what is best for the fulfillment of life, what is best for the fulfillment of all the universe, and ultimately to bring love, the cliche term love into the whole universe. And so what evil is anything that prevents that from happening. It's almost like a black hole or the wormhole or something that sucks the possibility of a righteous act happening. And so then the question that follows that is, how did that happen? What in what domain does that occur?
Right.
And that's a metaphysical question. And so when you get into metaphysics, I don't think, especially here in the West, we really pay too much attention to the metaphysics, because whatever side of the aisle you're on, the Christians are arguing from the Christian worldview.
Right.
And the atheist or the secularist are arguing from a scientific, technically worldview or whatnot. But the ironic thing is that they're both using the moral compass of Christianity.
Yeah, which is I've always found ironic. Yeah.
And so, I'm trying to figure out which way. So not trying to get into the weeds, but
Get into the weeds. It's fine.
So what I find interesting about that is that we lost my train of thought again.
So you talk about the secularists and the atheists and the way that they essentially argue the whole idea of like a non-objective morality and argue their point from a Christian perspective, which is so very ironic because you're right, they do.
But
the Sam Harrises of the world, essentially,
yes.
Yeah.
And so that gets down to the is-ought dilemma, where it's like, can you derive an ought from an is? Because I think that's the bedrock of the good versus bad, the righteous versus unrighteous, the privation of the willful removal of an opportunity for a righteous act, evil, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And personally, and I think a lot of philosophy will back me up on this, you cannot derive an ought from is.
Parse that out a little bit. So
think about a scientific, like basically the scientific method. Let's try that. So you do this, your 5 steps of your test or whatnot to see if something is, but then you can never actually say something is 100%. You just say it's most likely this way.
Okay.
But all that's based off of sense data. And so a lot of atheistic or secularist motives or argumentations center around like, well, I feel bad when X happens, therefore it is bad. Or I feel good when X happens, so therefore good is bad. But it's within the context of physical feeling. And
right.
whatnot.
Okay.
But then they use that to substitute the metaphysic aspect of why is that bad? How do you know that what you're feeling is true?
Right.
How do you know? How are you deriving that ought? What is the epistemic background, the epistemic premise for which you know for a fact that is true?
Yeah. Okay. So this whole idea of like, from a Christian perspective, it would be like separating the flesh from morality. But from a more secular perspective, I think it would be like separating emotion from the actual legitimate state of things, like pulling those apart. Because you're right. And then like the same concept, I think, is true of like argumentation and thinking through any concept. Like we have the whole, and we've talked about this on the show a little bit before, is like the whole idea of like pathos, right? It's the weakest form of any kind of argumentation in a debate, but that absolutely co-opts people in the way they think. I feel bad about this, therefore it's objectively bad. Well, that's not always true. No. I feel good about this, therefore it's not always true. And there is a higher moral code that dictates whether or not things are, as you would put it, righteous or unrighteous. Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Yeah, that's how I view it. That's my subjective take. But I think, like I said, biblically, that's how you see God operate. It's like he's done some stuff to people that's the people that it happened to. The Amalekites
didn't enjoy.
They were like that. This is bad,
right?
But it was the right thing to do because they're killing babies, because they're, sodomizing guests.
Yeah.
The list goes on.
Sounds like a fun weekend in California. I mean, yeah.
I mean, it's California to a T. So, that's why I view it kind of righteous, unrighteous in that way, because God is doing whatever he can to correct the cosmic balance, not to get Egyptian or Babylonian on you with the
right
cosmic scales or whatnot. But his ultimate goal.
6-7?
What is 6-7?
I don't know. I still don't know. I know it's what the kids are saying.
So it's crazy you said it, synchronicity. I worked with a kid today that's like 21. He said 6-7 about 67 times.
Yeah.
And I still know it. Like,
I have no clue.
The context he used in it, I could not understand.
No, it's from some song, I believe. My nieces and nephews say it, and people at work hear their kids say it. So now, me being 32 with no children, I just occasionally make fun of these children I don't have. So I don't. That's sad. All right, let's move on. So, you were talking about the Babylonians,
Right. They're the origin of 6-7.
Oh, right, right.
That's where it comes from.
We've come full circle. Yeah. So, well, okay. So you're the whole idea of like the cosmic balance and righteousness and that kind of thing, I think makes pretty rational sense. And from like a biblical perspective, you're right. Like it's weird how this allegedly, and I'm trying to speak as like impartially as I can. This allegedly benevolent, kind, loving figure is also like commissioning the murdering of babies.
Yeah.
Like genuinely commissioning the murdering of babies, commissioning the murdering of like an entire family and their bloodline. Like if you look into the story of Achan after the Israelites take over Jericho, he's like, God's like this got to go, and he murders Achan and his entire family in the Valley of Achor.
He literally opened up a highway to hell. Opened up the earth, swallowed them.
Right. And like I always hearing that story as like a younger person, and even now, like imagined Achan with like a bunch of kids who were my age. So I was 15 and imagining him with a bunch of like 15-year-old kids who were just like chilling, trying to have a good time. Like Dad stole some shit from the city.
They may have even said, "Dad, you probably shouldn't do that."
Right. And so that's, I think, what does not resonate well with most people. And for me, that is a concept I still very much struggle with. And I think it's glossed over by so many people. And like I said earlier, kind of brushed off as this very juvenile concept. And along with that, and I was reading something about this earlier this week, there's this whole idea, and I forget the terminology, you'll have to forgive me. It's this whole idea of moral versus natural evil. And the whole idea of moral versus natural evil being like, okay, maybe what Achan did was like objectively bad, so he and his family had to go. And even if we can like be okay with that concept, even if we can rationalize that concept, there are still like earthquakes and tornadoes that ravage entire families and neighborhoods. That also, from like a emotional perspective, at a minimum, seems bad, seems evil, seems not good.
Right.
And so, again, the argument is like, why would a benevolent, omniscient, all-powerful creator be cool with those things? And one of the thoughts that I read, and we're getting into this a lot earlier than I planned, but what the hell, is this whole idea of like, did the fall of man, did the coming of the 200 Watchers, did that corrupt not just people, not just animals, but the legitimate face of the earth to such a degree that these things happen?
Yes.
All right, short answer. That's a good show, guys.
I mean, yeah, that's definitely where I would have taken the conversation too. Is obviously this is from a Christian worldview,
right?
Christian perspective, and we can wrap it up in a nice bow later on. But from a Christian perspective, yes, the fall of man, the sin in the Garden of Eden, it has there was a physical effect to it, but there's probably metaphor involved within the story.
Yeah.
But the actual cosmic scope of that is monumental in the fact that the entire created universe was affected by that sin. And so that the anointed heir of the heavenly throne, mankind, fell. They made the same mistake that Lucifer had already made previously, in that they rebelled against the Lord, albeit they were young, naive, ignorant, and tricked. They still willfully did that. And so there's a couple of verses, I'm sure I mentioned before in Revelation, that talk about the Jesus opening up his mouth and the river of life flows out of his mouth off his tongue.
Yeah.
And there's been quite a few theologian church fathers to kind of dive into that. And I think Dr. Michael Heiser actually has a paper on something similar to that. But the gist of that is essentially that's a picture of Judgment Day. And what that river of life is like the glory of the Lord exposing the true nature of the world. And there's a couple things you can unpack from that, but basically the river of life is like a cooling touch to those who are righteous, and like a burning fire to those who are unrighteous. That's a similar image that we've been painted to and got into the last like the image has been painted for us in our upbringing of like heaven's a nice, cool place. The AC's always on and whatnot, and
Right.
hell is fire and brimstone.
It's hot. It's fiery.
It's hot. Got to take your clothes off, and
Right.
that kind of thing.
And you're still hot.
And you're still hot. You get burnt, but your skin never falls off. Just awful things, And who's to say that's not the case? But I think a lot of that's more to to describe the state of the soul during the afterlife. And so, to get to my point is, why is that happening? Why is the glory? Why is the true nature of the universe essentially being exposed in that moment? And that is because in the garden, when we sinned, Adam and Eve sinned and fell away, the fallen aspect of this world, of this universe, was almost a grace, a mercy for the Lord to protect his children. And so that they were no longer righteous. They were no longer in a perfect state. The very essence of what they were was mired. And so I've again alluded to this as well. You see, and I'm kind of jumping all over the place, but I'm trying to get to the point where
No, you're good.
I've talked about it again, Moses, John, Habakkuk, Isaiah, Elijah, anybody who saw the face of the Lord, they had to see a cover. Like they had to cover themselves. They couldn't truly witness the glory of the Lord because it's too much. Because especially the Old Testament prophets, salvation had not been gifted to mankind yet. It had not been redeemed. We had not been redeemed. And so it's a mercy for the Lord to separate himself from us, to not reveal to kind of hide us in a veil, so to not reveal our true nature.
Okay, let me pause you right there, and hopefully you'll remember that thought.
I
need to write something down.
Yeah.
That is, I don't know, and maybe you mentioned this the last time we talked, and I just didn't catch on to it, but I don't know that I've ever heard that couched in that terminology before. The way I've always heard people talk about like God appearing to man is like, he's so terrible, he's so mighty, he's so beautiful, people can't handle it. And it almost sounds like if you were at a monster truck rally, like Sunday, 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 you'll see the Crusher going at it and you won't be able to stand it. And that doesn't paint a very pleasant picture. Like when you talk about Moses going up on Mount Sinai and seeing the glory of God and his face glows like a rechargeable battery for like a hot minute, like that doesn't sound like the kind of thing, the way people describe the creator of the universe, the father of all mankind. That doesn't sound like the same thing that you just described, which sounds much more like it's a much more beautiful thing. It's a much more kind, benevolent thing. This whole idea that in an effort to still continue to like father, to nurture, to care for, to love the thing he created, the creator had to essentially separate himself from them to be like near them, to be close to them.
Right.
And that's a much more, I think, beautiful picture than, come see Soul Crusher every Wednesday night at 7:00. 10,000 gallons of fuel burning diesel. It's a much nicer picture than that.
Yes. Yeah. And you don't have to pay for overpriced ticket to go see the monster trucks.
Right. But I've never heard it couched in that terminology before.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of pissed that I've never heard it because that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
And it's much more beautiful, I think.
It is. And I had a thought.
Damn it. See, this is what I was worried about.
No, it's my fault for working a blue collar job.
Yeah, Tyler, for those of you who aren't aware, Tyler works a real man's job. He works with his hands like a real man, and John and I work at home, so this is why the stream was late tonight. We had to wait for him to come back from his
I'm sorry.
big boy job. So no worries. We waited on Dad to come home. He's back.
Daddy's here and he's
That's right.
Yeah. Say the thing you said.
10,000 gallons of fuel burning diesel.
Yes, that's that's it.
No, this whole idea that that God had to kind of cover himself, remove himself from
and
that hit it. Okay.
Yes, amen. So that gives birth, that image right there, when I heard it phrased to me like that. So this is not just a disclaimer. This is nothing I discovered myself and figured out. It's something I've gotten from exploring the Orthodox faith and ultimately reading the writings of the early church fathers, which are very historical, highly vindicated. Secular academics look at them and like, yeah, these are legitimate, that kind of thing. So, I'm not some brainiac or whatnot, but I'm expressing how I've interpreted those, and it's very similar to the early church fathers. And when you have that image of like the Lord has separated himself from mankind as a mercy, you have the undercurrent of that. So why does he allow mankind to continue to grow? Well, one, he loves us, we're his children. Okay, we're his children. Why did he make us? Obviously to become heirs and rule his kingdom with him, so that he has a relationship that is true and whole, and he's not alone.
Yeah.
Because what's the point of love if you have no one else to love, if you have nothing else to love, that kind of thing. And so his plan is still, I've said this before, and I don't know how accurate it is, but the way I see it is like his plan to us looks like he had to alter it, but his plan is still going on, and that is that humanity was placed in a cradle in the Garden of Eden and was intended to grow, and we are still growing in a sense as we're maturing. And some people can argue that when Jesus came, died, and rose again, and gave us the gift of salvation, that was the full maturation point. But all that aside, that gives birth to the narrative of Jesus. That's why Jesus becoming incarnate, which myself and a couple other theologians, I'm not a theologian, but a lot of theologians believe that it was always the plan of God to incarnate and rule his kingdom as man alongside his children. And so I think it's not that the story of Jesus, just if you read it in the black and white, it's not beautiful, but I think it adds even more beauty to the fact that like Jesus's incarnation, and you look at how God mingles in the history of mankind in the Old Testament or in antiquity leading up to the point of Jesus.
Yeah.
The whole point of that is, yeah, you can look at it in a good versus bad, and it's like, man, he came down and he did stuff that, hurt people, or, one of my favorite stories, I think it's in Ezra's, one of the non-extra canonical books,
Right.
Habakkuk went, little people know this, Habakkuk went and saw heaven as well. And he was resistant like Jonah. He's like, I'm not worthy. I'm going to run away or whatnot. And then the angel grabs him by the hair and basically forces him to go see heaven. And so you got a lot of stories of that where God's like mingling and intentionally moving the chess pieces of history. So therein throws the question up of like, is there actually free will? Is it predetermination? He's all powerful. He can do what he wants.
Yeah.
Like, how is there free will if that happens? But I mean, it's similar to like you have a child and, they love to climb. They love to jump off stuff. And I think that's great for them. But you have to wait until they're ready, till they're big enough to jump off a 3-foot ledge. Or you have to wait till that they're nimble enough to where they can walk on we got a little garden that has a rock wall on it, probably about 4 foot high. I still hold my daughter's hand. She's 3 years old. But when she's ready, and when I see that she's ready to do it on her own, I can let go, that kind of thing. And so it's a similar thing with God in the story of Jesus. It's like he's still fighting for his children to be reunited with him. He's still going to make a way for this to happen. Throw in the outside forces of Lucifer, the fallen angels, all these privations of righteousness. That's their whole intent, is to prevent this from happening, prevent God's children from being reunited and elevated above the angels and ruling his kingdom, and the angels will have to be subjugated to him. Some angels are fine with that, some aren't. You have all this element going on right there. I think that explains quite a bit more of why God is the way he is, why righteousness versus unrighteousness is probably, in my opinion, the more clear way to view it. And then, we carry on. So.
You look like you had something to say, John.
Yeah, I mean, I love the framing of that because, you take the term righteousness and one of the definitions of that is the state of him who is as he ought to be, a state acceptable
That's
to God.
beautiful. Yeah.
And when you are not in that state, like that's objective, it is objective that you are not in that state acceptable to God. And therefore you can see the dichotomy of righteous versus unrighteous right there, because it's like it is an objectable state to be in,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and that frames the entire biblical story, because when humanity was created,
when they were in Eden, they were in the state that they were
as they ought to be. Yeah.
Acceptable to God, in the presence of God. And when they fell, they were moved out of that state. And the whole biblical story is now in redeeming them back to that state of righteousness.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, since we're on the topic of the fallen nature of the world, what the separation that man and God have, and this also tackles the question of why did Jesus have to come down here and die and all that.
Right. Yeah.
The separation basically married them to death. And I think, John, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think one of the oldest etymological definitions of death is a separation.
Yeah.
And so mankind was married to death now. They were in the same state as the fallen angels. And so, we think of death as a physical thing that, when this body gets old or you get struck by a semi-truck that went off the rails because they were looking at their phone, something crazy, like some kind of crazy thing. A hurricane pops up out of nowhere because somebody was snorting cocaine and flying a DARPA airplane in the
Saw some chemtrails today.
in the Caribbean. So like whatever it is that takes your physical life, we think that's it. That's what God's here to protect us from. No, it's not. It's part of our maturation process for our spirit, is that we experience what it's like to have a beginning and what it's like to have a seeming end. And so that we have, the ancient Greek trope of, the gods are jealous of mortals because everything they do is beautiful because they have an end, that kind of thing. I see that as one of the best ways to make the most out of your spiritual growth, is to live like you were dying, not to quote Tim McGraw.
Good Tim McGraw quote.
I listened to him this morning, man. I love his songs. They're corny, but they're good. But, that kind of thing. So, what happens after you die? Well, we're eternal beings. And again, this is, all part of the Christian worldview, but we're eternal beings. So you go to a place that has the absence of God. You're what's the word? Like, you have no hope, no chance.
Desolate?
You're desolate. Yeah. You are an eternal being, known that you're created for a purpose, but you can't fulfill that.
Yeah.
That's
as bad as it gets.
I mean, that's a good enough reason for weeping and gnashing of teeth without the fire.
Yeah.
And that, I think that's ultimately the great tragedy of the fall, is that mankind was destined for that until Jesus came and lived the life that he did. And I mean, if you want to get in that, we can, but ultimately that was the great point that I was going to make, is that until he did come and rescue us, that was going to be our eternal punishment. And we view it as a punishment, but it was a necessity.
Which, a couple of things that I jotted down here, and we'll get to them, I guess, each in their turn. But like one that I want to get to is this whole idea of I hesitate to call it bad stuff, because we kind of redefined the concept of bad, but the whole idea of things like that being a necessity, like that already is an interesting place to come from, because it's this whole concept of like, man, as a result of X, simply had to be, cast into the fire. Them's the rules. And as a result of X, Y, or Z happening, like God had to separate himself from man. Them's the rules. Who made those rules? Who did that? Did God make those rules? Is he simply following cosmic rules that he can't break? It's a very
Martin Luther made
entering that as part of the 99 whatever it was.
Grievances.
That's what it was. Grievances. Who made those rules? And I think that's a question that not a lot of people think to ask, or maybe it's the fact that people are uncomfortable asking that question because, and it's another one of those things where people either look at you like, oh my gosh, that is so juvenile, you stupid little bitch. Or people approach it like it's like borderline blasphemous.
Yeah.
How dare you? And it's like, no, I think that's a perfectly rational question to ask. Like, why was that a rule to begin with? You tell me not to touch the paint, I'm going to ask you why.
Right.
Is it still wet? Cool. If it's still wet, that's fine. But I'm curious as to why I can't touch it.
Right.
And that's even another one of like, and why I think there's probably some more scriptural context around like the fall of man in Eden, because this whole like, don't do that, bro. And that's it. Concept around the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, like, seems a little strange. That was it. That was the only conversation they had. These people who allegedly walked with God every day of their, and that's the only talk they had about the tree of the, you can't, no, I don't buy that for a second.
Well, John, were you about to say something?
No, you're good, brother.
Okay. Well, I mean, Father Seraphim Rose is a kind of a controversial figure in the Orthodox world, but he wrote a really great book called, Nihilism is one of his biggest books. It's
a bleak title.
It is, but it's an amazing book. Highly recommend it. But he has another book. I forget exactly what it is. It costs $1,000 to find.
Dang.
Because nobody will publish it. But it's basically about, what exactly was happening in Genesis in the Garden of Eden. And the idea that I've kind of subscribed to is that from outside looking in, you're like, yeah, God puts the tree in the Garden of Eden. It's like, don't eat that.
Yeah. Right.
And then they're like, okay.
It makes them sound
yes, sir.
so.
Yes.
He says, don't eat that. He said, all right, I won't eat the tree.
Okay.
I won't touch it. Nope, I won't touch the tree.
Oh, the snake said I could eat it. I
Right.
won't die.
Yeah, it's some Forrest Gump shit.
Well, there's the first instance of materialism right there. It's like, no, you're not going to die.
Right.
That's switching the mindset from the heavenly things to the material world.
Sure.
And so what the tree was actually, whether it was an actual tree that pooped out an apple or not, who knows?
Right.
You get these spiritual people, mystics or whatnot, think it was magic mushrooms, an Amanita muscaria or whatnot.
Right.
I highly doubt that. But what it is, whether it's real or not, was a symbol of eventually mankind was going to eat of that tree when they were ready. And what that would have done is open them up to basically thinking and being like God, and knowing that it was even possible not to obey the Lord. Basically opened them up to know they had free will and whatnot. However, the beauty of that is that when you have free will, which I definitely believe and subscribe to, that we do have the free will. The beauty of that is that you almost relinquish that to serve the Lord, to follow Him.
Yeah.
And that's essentially the essence of what the Garden of Eden was, is that it was going to be a training ground, and eventually they were going to get there. But the version we have in Genesis is definitely paints a picture of just straight up, here's a test, see if you pass.
Yeah.
And if you fail, then it's over.
Yeah, it's like you put a Down syndrome kid in a gym with like a picture of boobs in a folder and said, don't open that, but it's a picture of boobs. Like, they're never not going to open that.
Let's test it.
Let's find. Yeah,
we got to find that out. Scientific method, buddy.
That's the way that most people describe that story, and it feels like that's the way most people look at that story. Even people who say that that's not the way that, I think that's the way they look at it. Because if somebody tells, like, if John walks up and says, "Hey, there is a tree out there that's going to turn you into LeBron James, but don't you dare! I'm gonna go eat. I'm gonna go grab an apple."
I like my hairline.
I'm fine. That's fair. Yeah. But like, I'm gonna go do that. Right. There's no way I'm not.
Yeah.
And that's the way I think most people describe it. That's the way most people look at it. Quite frankly, that's the way I read it up until very recently, because that's all the context that's in like the canonical Bible, and nobody thinks past that or reads into that at all. I finally heard there's allegedly a book of Adam and Eve. Have you guys heard of this?
Yeah, I've listened to it before.
I haven't listened to it. I heard a little bit of like the story of it, and it sounds very interesting. I don't know much about it or where it came from. I don't know if it gives more context to the Garden of Eden or not. It's like Adam and Eve after the fall. It's fascinating. But just the whole idea that there was more context there, I think makes a lot more sense, because otherwise it just sounds mean. Yeah.
I mean, and it sounds like a setup. Sorry, John, did I cut you off?
No, you're good.
Sounds like a setup. And it's like a pissed-on breadcrumb for secularists and atheists to use as a talking point for talking about, like, see, God's a narcissist. He's evil. He just put these two little babies in there that just barely got off the boob, and it's like, here, don't eat this tree.
Right.
I mean, I experience it on a daily basis with both my daughter and my son. I'm like, please stop doing this. Just be patient. Out the window. It's like, if I say that, I need to start telling them, yeah, go do it.
Right.
Reverse psychology, that kind of thing, because they will inevitably go and do that.
Yeah.
And it's not their fault. And it would not be Adam and Eve's fault if that's how it was arranged in the Garden of Eden. But I personally don't think it was. But that, back to the, the low-hanging fruit that atheists love to latch on. And kind of the broader picture is like that materialistic aspect of good and evil is, I think, rooted right there in that story of the Garden of Eden. And then they just take that perspective and use it to analyze the Bible, and they're just constantly thinking about, look, he killed people, and then he told people not to kill people. You know what? Hypocrite, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But the greater Christian narrative we talked about in the last episode that I was on, we're missing quite a bit of the context and the actual cosmic scope of what the biblical narrative, the Christian narrative, is actually contains.
Right.
And that's what has allowed secularism. Is that a word?
If it's not, we'll say it is.
I do that every podcast.
Yeah, it works.
The dab. That's what allows atheists, so to speak, to have such success, and it's why they've grown, I think, so much, is because we are missing a big chunk of the full Christian narrative. The big enchilada,
Yeah. John? I don't know if you have an open face tonight, but you keep looking like you're about to say
No,
something.
I'm good, man.
Okay.
I'll chime in if I got something.
I mean, I believe you will. Maybe it's just the way you. Maybe it's just your face.
Thanks.
I worked with a guy a while back who he sat in one of my training classes, and every 10 minutes I'd be like, you about to, he said he had an open face.
Yeah.
And he just constantly looked like he was about to say something. I was like, close that face. Stop it.
Sorry, dude.
All I see is the top of his head, and he sits really still. But then when I look over, sometimes I'll see him just dart to the left, and I think he's about to say something.
That tracks. Yeah. So with the whole concept of moral evil and free will, I guess we haven't really parsed out the idea of free will. Like, there's this whole idea of a kind, benevolent creator who creates man. Why he creates man, that's a whole different story entirely. But he does it, and assuming that he does it and that he is all knowing, he does it with the full knowledge that some bad stuff's gonna happen. And so, already there, we have I don't know whether to call it this. The only way I know how to describe it is a fundamental issue with the logic there, because you have a creator, God, who is allegedly this benevolent, all-knowing, all-powerful figure who does something full well knowing something bad's going to happen down there. And you could even extrapolate that on to the creation of all of these other heavenly celestial beings who came down and corrupted his creation. They were created too.
Right.
You created them, again, assuming he's all-knowing, with the full knowledge, knowing full well Azazel was going to grab 199 of them and come down here and start boning like rabbits and destroying his creation. That's legitimately the story in Enoch. That's not even an exaggeration. That's the story as described in the book of Enoch. They come down and they start boning everything that moves. Yeah. And so, the idea is, if God is omniscient and can see into the future, how, did he just miss that day? And that's where I think a lot of people get hung up on the whole idea of evil. Sure, maybe there were rules when God created man. Maybe we broke those rules, free will, yada, yada, yada. But didn't he know beforehand? And that's again another question that people are really uncomfortable asking, right? Because it starts to sound like people start, and I wonder if this is part of, and I don't want to harp on the 501c3 system tonight, that's not what we're here for, but I wonder if that's part of that system, that country club push is hey, you better not ask these questions because those are blasphemous, those are dangerous. Don't you dare uncover that stone, because if you ask that question, you're a bad person.
The whole system's going to fall down. It's going to be your fault.
Yeah.
You're going to make people think.
You're in danger of hellfire if you do that.
Nobody needs to think.
It's so weird.
Well, what I will say to that, and I will speak carefully, because I have a notion that free will's there. From what I've read, I know the early church fathers preached it, and I think you can see evidence in the biblical, just even the 66 books we have of free will existing. Especially when you throw in, the couched answer, as you say, of like why the Lord embezzled in history throughout the time.
Yeah.
Throughout time, especially in antiquity, and showing that it's actually an act of mercy, and he's trying to pull us out of the separation, trying to provide an accurate, a holistic and a righteous way of reuniting us back, getting mankind redeemed so we can have union with the Lord again, and he can expose his full glory. But this has kind of reached the end of, you're kind of starting to get into the mysteries of the Lord, mysteries of God, when you start to basically ask, how does his relationship with time work? Because we do know God is outside of time, outside of the earth. He's eternal, and we will be, when we are rejoined with him, we will experience eternity again. And that's something that is hard for our mind to wrap around, because we have a beginning and we know we have an end coming.
Yeah.
We have the beginning of history, or at least what we think it is, no matter what you subscribe to, and then potentially there will be an end. Some people think it could just keep going on until entropy fully takes force, and then the universe snaps.
Right.
And then everything after a bajillion years comes back to a singularity and starts all over again.
Yeah.
If you're Christian, you think a lot of people think Jesus is coming back very soon, but eventually, no matter what denomination you're part of, Jesus is coming back. So there's finite beginning and ends to the realm that we're in, no matter what you subscribe to. God doesn't operate that way. God is an eternal being. He is eternity. He was, he is, and he is to come. That's our way of describing the magnitude of God's presence. And so he operates outside of time. We have delineated time as a phenomenon, as a metaphysical phenomenon, because after the fall, at least from our worldview, after the fall, mankind started experiencing a physical death. So as far as we can tell, people they die and then they disappear. They never come back. That kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But even that being the case, knowing that we are eternal beings, we are still secondary creations, in that Carson, John, and Tyler, and anybody listening, their soul has a beginning, but it will have no end. So, and then all that to say, there's many different facets to how we associate ourselves, what our relationship with time is. But one of the great mysteries is God is outside of time, and so maybe. And I want to pick your brain, as the ultimate purpose of this it's just something I'm kind of wading through myself. Maybe it's kind of like, I'm not going to say he doesn't know how it's going to turn out. He knows eventually he's going to wrap things up and fully bring mankind in total union with him.
Yeah.
But maybe as far as like the aspect of how things are going to work, like the different nuances, who's going to make what decision or whatnot, maybe he truly gives us over to total free will.
Yeah.
In the sense that all that really is stated about God's knowledge of us, I'm almost done, I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
All that really stated about God's knowledge of us is that he knows our heart.
Right.
And so, why I used pinky, I don't know. He knows our heart, And so that's really it. That's all the information we're given about. And so he knows what we are capable of. He's sewed and stitched us together in the womb, according to Isaiah.
Right.
And I wholeheartedly believe that. But he made you, in order to be like him, you have to have agency. And it's confirmed we are made in his image.
Mm-hmm.
And so that, I'm repeating myself, but basically, like, what if he's given us over to free will, knowing that we are made in his image with his attributes, with his grand purpose for us.
Right.
And so he allows that to move.
Yeah.
To move in our own way. And same thing, it happens, like, there's not time in heaven, and the angels were created, they're created beings, they were created in heaven, but they had free will as well. So maybe the same thing is you kind of see what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I 100% see what you're saying. And the problem of free will, obviously, is something people have, what up, Q? Something that people have wrestled with for a while. And one of the things that you mentioned, I want to spend some time and hang out here for a minute, because this whole idea of God being outside of time is one that people have thrown around, and I've always assumed that's correct. But another idea that people, and again, I haven't really questioned that one ever. Like, I haven't really sat down and played little thought games and run logical experiments on whether or not that's the case or not. But what I have thought about and wondered about is the whole idea of like the concept of free will and whether people do legitimately have any kind of agency, because the problem you run into, and most of us choose to believe that man has some kind of free will or self-agency, but they'll say, well, God knows everything and God predetermined everything, like he knows what's going to happen. Okay, we have a fundamental problem here. All right? That problem being, if God is all-knowing, all-powerful, and know exactly what was going to happen, when it was going to happen, and how it was going to happen, yet gave you free will, he is already in some kind of essence determine your behavior. Period. Full stop. There's no other way to not determine your behavior if that's not the case, as far as I'm concerned, because we're talking about a being that has ultimate power, folks. I'm sorry if I'm talking fast. You may have to slow me down. But the fundamental problem there is, if he already knows and if he is all powerful, you have no agency after that, except that perhaps he chooses not to be fundamentally aware of those decisions. It's the whole idea of like a master chess player who's at the chessboard may not know what I'm going to do. If Magnus Carlsen were sitting right here, he doesn't know what my next move's going to be, but he can still kick my ass. Right. Like, that's not going to change. In this game, he's still all powerful and all knowing, and I'm a and so that the best way I know how to articulate it is probably closer to the relationship we would have playing a chess match with God, right? Like, he may not know exactly what move we're going to make, but all the pieces are in his court. He's got all the balls in his court. We're not going to do anything to stop him. But the interesting thing is there are a lot of examples of him changing his mind as a result of human intervention. The story of
his
Abraham,
mind can be changed.
Lot, like his mind was, and either that's a metaphor or it legitimately happened because of something somebody said to the creator of the universe. They changed his mind, and maybe it's just me choosing to engage the more like positive, nice thing. But like, I like the idea of the fact that the creator gives us that opportunity to experience like legitimate free will, legitimate self-agency. And I would argue the only way that can actually happen is if that's the case, if he does not necessarily have complete and total prior knowledge of what we're going to do. Now, obviously he knows you very, very, very well, but does he know exactly what your next move is going to be? Is it possible? Maybe, but I think it is more likely that he chooses, at the very least, chooses not to engage in the knowing of that thing.
Yeah, I would encourage everybody. Ed Mabry did an interview with Tinfoil Hat back in probably October where he parses out this concept a little bit, and it's one of the better summations of this that I have heard, and I can't really do it great justice, but he essentially talks about like we're all made in the image of God. Part of that being an imager is having the ability to create.
Yeah.
Right. Is we can create things that don't exist yet. Right. Like humans are one of them.
Yeah.
Right. Us and God are kind of the only people who can create real like humans. Right. And part of that
can confirm I got two.
Right. And it's like part of that is since we can create things that don't exist, is like you can maybe logically flow that God cannot know things that don't exist.
Right.
So it's like we can do things and affect things, that don't exist now before we do them. But he knows our nature.
Yeah.
Right. He knows our nature very well. So he kind of knows, hey, they're going, especially when working in collective, they're going to work and do these things. That's kind of how you get prophecy.
Yep.
But he doesn't maybe know exactly when they're going to happen because they don't exist yet, if that kind of makes sense.
That's such a good point. And that reminds me of, I think I've talked about this on the show before, the Foundation trilogy, where like in that book, it's one of the first like true science fiction books ever written. Isaac Asimov, the author, who was a weird guy and probably a Mason, talks about the whole idea of like, man, we can
100%.
we can predict future behavior, but only in large masses.
Right.
Like the larger the mass of people, the better we can predict, how they're going to move, what they're going to do. That's a super interesting concept, John.
Well, that's where you see the movement to get the masses to have a collective hive mind to basically distill all of human ideology into one big lump.
Oh, yeah.
So because you cannot predict the individual behavior
Right.
of human beings unless you know what they believe on, A through Z variables.
Yeah.
Then you have a pretty close idea of that. Then you especially can predict how they will behave when a mass panic happens, panic for lack of a better word, but when, for example, false flag.
When everybody freaks out because of a fake virus, maybe some planes flying into some
Right.
stuff like that happens. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it starts to explain the concept of like, why does everybody think they're in the end times?
Right.
It's probably you are. It's like you're creating the environment for that to happen, and like God kind of will know because He knows our nature is like, okay, now it's time.
Right.
If that makes sense.
And I think that's, not to get into the the geopolitics and the global.
No, we're at that point. It's okay.
Yeah, not to get into that mode, but I think that's ultimately what is happening is, as we've touched on, is how you can control a mass amount of people. It ties into the free will is because the free will is kind of being predetermined. It's like the gift of free will is being packaged.
Yeah.
And
pushed.
and pushed and densified. It's a word I've been using lately. I know it's not a real one.
That's a fun word.
But it's been densified, into the point to where it can be controlled. But the scary thing for the controllers is the fact that free will still does exist.
Yeah.
And so that somebody can easily act on their own free will, say, no, this is all BS, which a lot of people are doing now. And then that will influence the masses to perhaps break free of those restraints.
Right.
But, all that to say, I think we're seeing a push for us to give permission for the end times to be engaged, for the final revelation
That's a good point.
to be acted out, is in the sense, whether or not you think these prophecies about the holy nation in the Middle East, about the rebuilding of the temple, the red heifer, the blood boat of Israel, and all sorts of stuff like that,
Right.
it's definitely there's definitely evidence to show that somebody believes in all that. Somebody believes that if we can enact a lot of those events to happen, that they can force God to have to engage the end times. And then, me personally, I feel like they think they have a shot at winning the final battle.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So,
dude, that makes a lot of sense. And what's the point of doing that if you know exactly the outcome? Like, there's probably some element of, I don't know, like a lack of knowing, free will, something in there that causes whatever entities are doing this to continue to work at some of this bad stuff that's going on. And to your point about like moving the masses, this is one of the things that and this is how I am. One of the things that I've just recently become aware of is all this like MK Ultra Project Monarch stuff that's going on in the media. It's like MK Ultra and Mockingbird Media had a baby. This whole concept of like these micro traumas that are just forced on people over and over and over again in an effort to like essentially just mind control the mass populace. And it's happening constantly. It's one of the things I asked Danny on our show with the rabbit hole is like, can I even turn on my television, or am I just constantly, essentially just sucking at the of mind control the entire time? And it does make me wonder how much of that is robbing the masses of their free will, stealing it, and using it to funnel energy and intention into the bringing about of the end times, like it's some kind of like weird alchemical thing,
Right. Well, I mean, I think you're spot on, because think about, like, we obviously wouldn't be having fun right now doing this podcast, but think about all the things that grab your attention when you come home.
Right.
Or when you are at home. And if they, by some great miracle, disappear, what would you be doing?
Yeah.
I'm a drummer. I've had rhythm since I was young, and
I forgot you did that.
as
Yeah.
soon as I sat down on the drum set at 9 or 10, I forget what it was, I immediately just, no one had to show me how to do anything.
Yeah.
That's one of my personal gifts, I believe, is just the rhythm. I mean, I would be doing that and mastering it and just going ham on it, you
Yeah.
know? And whatever specific gifts you have, like Mozart and Newton, all those weird autistic gurus of the past,
Right.
like they didn't have any distractions. So they just maximized their output of whatever it is that they could possibly do.
Yeah.
And they were like, Newton was very hard to control. Mozart was very hard to control, even though it happened towards the end of his life I forget what disease he ended up getting. But anyways,
AIDS.
I hope not. Did they have gay people back then?
Yeah,
Man, they're everywhere.
they are.
But all that to say, that's a microcosm of like just little examples of like what would you be doing without all these things.
Right.
But these things are designed on a physical level to just latch onto your biology to get you to latch onto them. I mean, I've been checking my phone twice since I've been on this podcast, mostly because I'm just making sure my family's okay. But that's
that
cope.
makes sense.
That's cope.
Yeah.
You know, but like all these different things, it's a cliche discussion, but all these different things that grasp your attention. So once you get the biological fix on there, then you start getting impregnated subconsciously with, you know, the right versus the left, or the right's interpretation. And then there's fragmentations of the right and there's fragmentations of the left. And wherever you fit on that spectrum, you know, they each have their own independent, respective interpretation of a singular event that is being broadcast to you.
Yeah.
And then you can go and whether it's sports, whether it's politics, whether it's, you know, Oprah falling down and you know, her mask comes off and you see a part of her lizard woman cheekbone or something like that, you know, whatever it is, it's being pushed with a purpose and with an intent.
Yeah.
And like you said, the microcosm, the micro traumas with the MK Ultra, that research actually goes back, well, like the Sigmund Freud era of psychology, but it was mastered by the conglomeration of the CIA, certain Middle Eastern Holy Land peoples,
Yep.
and their ancient religion and whatnot. And it's an age-old technique of completely mind-wiping somebody. And a question I love to ask people is like, why do they want to wipe your mind? Why do they want you to forget who you are?
Yeah. Yeah, my argument is that they're likely they want to embody some kind of evil spiritual entity in those people. Like that's my best guess as to why they want to do that.
And so you think they want to do that for us, like for the masses?
Either that, I mean, for the masses, I don't know that that's easily possible, like a reasonable thing to try to do to the masses on such a grand scale. But I think there's certainly an element of that, an element of like co-opting the creative power, the creative energy that the Creator like instilled in us, that God gave us, and trying to use that for whatever they're doing. Like I think that's part of it, and we've talked about this on the show a good bit, like what they're doing in a lot of these like big concerts that they're having that are just look like just giant occult rituals.
They are,
right?
yeah.
I think I saw somebody like Jules post something about this, like whole it was like somebody posted a picture of like a Zach Brown concert where they had like this satanic looking skeleton in a crown coming out like in some giant hologram, like this is how you summon a loosh, which I don't know what that is, but it's the whole idea of co-opting the spiritual energy, the spiritual intention of the masses, and moving it in like essentially just a satanic direction, like slowly moving the needle that way. And so yeah, I think that's constantly happening. As far as like the you know, more individual, like genuine, like MK Ultra, you're in a room getting raped and whatever else they're doing to those people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's an element of that, like legitimately trying to embody evil spirits in these people.
Yeah.
These spirits are very obviously like desperate to be embodied in some way. I can't remember who we talked to about this. Was it Jules, Steven? I can't remember. This whole idea of like these things want flesh, like they want to be embodied in this realm. And if they're not, like they're desperate for it. The whole concept of, was it Steven we talked to about this?
Yep.
Okay. Like the Legion, when Jesus cast the demons out of Legion, they're like, dude, please don't just have us like wandering the earth. Put us in the pigs. At least put us in the pigs. We want to be in the pigs. Let us be swine. Like they very clearly crave embodiment, which is weird, super weird, and kind of creepy. Like that scares me a little bit. I don't know why.
I mean, yeah, it is to lose your agency to a obviously evil being.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's harrowing. But again, that's not something I'm personally scared of. What I'm more scared of is that there's probably more people in the world currently who ignorantly maybe are moving in the direction of allowing that to happen to themselves.
Right.
So it's like basically a demonic zombie apocalypse is brewing. And
Honestly,
that's going to be hard to fight against.
I mean, why are we so obsessed with those stories, right? Like everybody friggin' loves, and it's one of those things where like people seem to have, people seem to have fundamental proclivities for things we either know are true or like know exist on some level. Right. Like people are obsessed with, dragons. They think those are super cool. Those, if you look into a lot of like old stories, if you look into like biblical text, if you look into like dragons appear to have legitimately been a thing once upon a time. Giants is another one. Spirituality is another one. What were we just talking about? Zombies, as far as I'm concerned, must be like some kind of either legitimate thing that was or a legitimate possibility on some level. Now, do I think it's going to be some Riri walking around the road with their arms hanging out? No, I don't think that's going to be a thing. But it does, like the level of attention it grabs that those stories, vampires is another low-hanging fruit. Like people are obsessed with them, and not because they're sexy and sparkle. People have been obsessed with them for a long time.
Right.
Why? There has to be a reason. There has to be something, either like some kind of intuition within us that's like, pay attention to that.
Yeah.
And I think it's part of like the same reason horror movies and like haunted houses are so capturing. There's something about visceral fear that's weirdly attractive to us. And maybe it's just the idea of feeling something in a world where everything's muted. Or maybe it's the flesh, it's the Satan, it's that trying to like call and lure us away to some other kind of intention, that some other kind of motive. I know that wasn't completely cohesive.
No, it wasn't.
John's looking at me like I'm insane. But I'm curious as to y'all's thoughts on that.
He's always got that face.
Is that just your face, John?
I think it's just my face.
That's unfortunate. You have a thought?
I mean, yeah, the first thing I would say is like you should never fear any of those things, because if you are have the spirit, you will never be possessed by a demon or anything like that. Demons, the spirit won't occupy the same space as something it's not compatible with. But as to your point, is like why people gravitate towards that thing. I think it is kind of a deception to push them in a state to where they give authority to something that will oppress them.
Mm.
That seems to be the gist of it, is that you have to lower like whatever frequency, whatever thing you're operating on, to some type of state of fear. And by doing that, you're inviting spiritual oppression. You're inviting oppression from these unclean spirits to interact with you, to speak to you in some way, to interact with your environment, and to attempt to deceive you. It's blind authority that you're giving to it.
Yeah.
Dude.
Well, I mean, the Lord talks about constantly that we're not to be people of fear. I mean, he harps on fear all the time.
Yeah.
And I think that gives credence to what John just said, is that it's not because he's just saying like, suck it up, quit acting like a baby, that kind of thing.
Right.
It's because
it's not a giant cosmic stop it. Like,
it's literally it's like, this is the best language I have to use for you idiots to understand it. Like, fear is what leads you. Could go on the Yoda rant. Fear is, I forget that whole mantra or whatnot, but fear is what opens you up to the demonic, opens you up to the privation of righteousness and whatnot. And as far as like all these different projections that we have of what's lurking in the darkness, what's lurking underneath, what's basically what our idea of what is in the darkness, that kind of thing, and based off of little bits and pieces and whatnot. You could go the Jungian route, Carl Jung. I'm not a Jungian by any means. I think
I just started listening to what is the name of his book?
He's got the
Good.
Red Book, Man's Search for Meaning.
That
no,
just
that's
started listening to
Viktor
that.
Frankl.
Okay, not that. I can't remember. It's got good in the title, I think. I can't remember. I'll look it up. Keep talking.
The Soul of Man. I have like 4 of his books, but the Red Book's his most infamous.
Oh, no, it was Nietzsche I just started listening to. I'm never mind. Different book.
Oh, yeah.
Different author.
Yeah. Basically, where he divides consciousness into 3 sections. You have the conscious, what we're actively participating in. You have the subconscious, which is, when one of us is talking, when we're listening, processing, and then we're kind of planning our next move and whatnot. And then you have the unconscious, which is this vast, deep territory, especially if you're a Jungian and you're, of the scientific realm, where millions of years of evolution, of genetic memory and genetic-based instincts and whatnot are the cogs and the wheels, the mechanisms by which all those function. And he has an idea of where we project, especially in fiction and with narrative, we project maps of our souls into whatever it is that we, create through ideation. And then he also opines that, you have these cultures that were existing around the same time or at different time periods, but on opposite ends of the earth, never have any evidence, at least as far as we think, of connection, of communication, projecting these same demons, like the vampire. They may have a different word for it, but when you look at who they are, they're the same thing. Same thing with the dragons. They're all that. And so his idea, which I kind of lean towards slightly, is that those are all these, the zombie, the vampire, the behemoth, the evil dragons. There's good and bad dragons, stuff like that. Whatever. Those are all unconscious projections of what we feel are, whether we know this or not, what our soul is capable of. What we could basically, what our shadow looks like, and what our light self, what our our actual self looks like. And he thinks you need to integrate those two. I definitely don't believe that. Integrate your shadow. Integrate your shadow with your the light side or the good side, whatever word.
Shadow work type stuff, yeah.
That kind of thing. And then ultimately you face those, whatever demon it is that you're projecting. And I don't like his...
Clean your damn room. Very Jordan Peterson, yeah.
Yeah, very, very, very Jordan Peterson. And that's what I think.
He's a Jungian, I think, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the thorn in his side, keeping him amongst other things from converting fully to Christianity. But I think that's true. I think you can see the state of your soul if you get in certain places, especially if you limit distractions. I'm not saying you need to do mantras or vipassana meditation, get to this place where you're floating out of body.
Yeah.
That's dangerous. But these images that come forth, especially in dreams, or if you're a writer, or if you're just, even something as small as like we all know people who love horror movies. Mm-hmm. I can't stand them. I don't want to inundate myself with darkness.
Right.
I'm just not a fan of it. A lot of that is used to kind of mind rape people into just being okay with that level of grotesque imagery.
Yeah.
Until eventually they're faced with it, and then they're void or mute of response, a natural response. It's a small micro trauma, or it's a small form of micro trauma. But I do think that whatever you gravitate to, or whatever image you see the most or whatnot, is a certain they're typologies of an evil that you could possibly move towards. Not something you need to integrate with yourself. Jung is right, and if you approach these things and you look at them and you observe them, interact with them, like, don't lose yourself in that, but you can learn certain aspects of, like, this is what I'm capable of. But ultimately, these are, man does have kind of a duality to themselves in a very nominal deterministic way, in the sense that, like, you have two choices. You could be righteous, you could be unrighteous. And then you have all these things that embedded within you and within your soul that you could see yourself becoming, different proclivities and whatnot. And then the same thing happens on the other side. But we are to always err on the side of righteousness and whatnot. And ultimately, there's only one image you will find, and that is Jesus Christ on the side of the light, in that you image yourself because you are an image of him. You image yourself as Christ. All that darkness fades away. All those proclivities disappear. So, sorry for that.
No.
rant, but that's
I think that makes a great deal of sense. The only place where I would maybe wonder a little bit, because I think the whole idea of people having proclivities for these things is certainly true. Like if you're one of the 2 billion women who are obsessed with vampires, maybe you have a proclivity towards being a slutty white girl who really likes vampires. Maybe you should watch out for that. Just
you
a
like
thought.
sucking the life out of people,
right? And you probably are a vampire if you're a middle-aged, like it's natural, right? It's part of your life cycle. So
I just imagine them going into a chrysalis and coming out as a vampire for some reason.
I think that happens. I swear, there's some of these women I work with, guys. That, but I think that does like track on a very abstract psychological level. I think that makes a lot of sense. The only place where I would push back and kind of wonder a little bit is, and maybe this is getting a little too like metaphysical, but to me, I think some of these concepts do end up being fractal in some nature, and I would wonder if, on some level, these are both legitimate psychological entities people are dealing with, and also legitimate, like, be they demonic presences or just like natural bad that's out there that existed that people also deal with.
Right.
And so I would
agree
wonder
with
if it's both in that scenario.
Yeah, it's both and. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I agree with you, and a lot. What I was saying is basically predicated on the fact that we've already talked about that there's demonic realm,
Right.
and so we established earlier that evil is privation of the good, for lack of a better word. And so that's what evil looks like, and you see in these these typologies leading you towards these actual beings, these actual creatures, whatever you want to call them,
Right.
that they're kind of drawing you in and saying, "This is you be like me, become like me." And so there's a spiritual and a physical side to it, in the sense that a vampire sucks the blood from living creatures so that he can, exist indeterminately.
Right.
Well, there's metaphysical actions that people can do, like your middle manager, to suck the life out of you and stuff like that. So, I mean, it's not just at work, in your relationships, like gaslighting your significant other into, doing something for you or whatnot, or seeing that significant others in a place where, lack of a better word, higher consciousness, they're getting better on or whatnot, and you want to bring them down to your level. Something as simple as like that. Like, yeah, that's the material manifestation of it, but it's influenced by the demonic creature, by the actual ethereal creature or being, if you will.
Right.
Yeah. So I agree with you.
Dude, that makes a lot of sense. I've never thought about it in that way before, but from a Jungian perspective, that makes a shitload of sense. And like, yeah, John, any thoughts while I'm collecting myself here?
No, I don't really have any on that one. That was a little bit of just an observation for me. It was interesting.
Yeah, that's wild. I guess I just wonder, like, with all this stuff out there, I don't know, man. Like, coming from free will and the problem of evil to this, and I am such a negative Nelly. Like, when I think about the whole concept of, like, these are legitimate beings who are out there who, have evil machinations in mind, and they're physical and metaphysical, and they're, doing X, Y, and Z, and they're, so present in this realm, it does tend to feel kind of hopeless, and it's one of like another area where, and maybe we can kind of, I guess, start to wrap things up on this, but another area where I run back into that whole problem of evil concept, where it's like, why give so much presence to these things as the all-powerful creator in and around the beings you're trying to usher into a new life? Like, why give them so much traction, right? Because I mean, even
they have privilege. You know,
yeah,
that-
yeah.
a lot of
Even like in the story of like Jesus when he goes out into the wilderness and Satan's like, see all this? That's mine. You want it?
Yeah.
Like that is a very clear representation of how much traction they have in this place, in this realm. If you want like a more modern example, take a look at Epstein and all the shit that's going on there. You think the people who are releasing these files, who are in the files, are worried about you taking them to jail? They're not. They own this shit. So it's like it's a very like simple, very obvious, but like I think very like just easy to use and easy to understand example of how much traction these things and these people have.
Right.
And so this is again like one of those problem of evil concepts where it's like, well, you know, it's the why did the wicked prosper issue. Like that's essentially what it is.
Right. Well, I don't have a good answer for that.
I appreciate that level of honesty.
I'm just being honest.
Yeah.
But what it's something I conjecture, maybe something I've been kind of pondering on is, you know, Ephesians talks about, you know, we don't wrestle with flesh and blood, but with powers, principalities of the air.
Yeah.
Great example of Jesus fasting in the wilderness and encountering Satan, and Satan correctly says, "This is I own all this. This is everything you see. I have the power to give it to you." So you can look at that and say, yeah, God's bestowed power upon them. And I'm going to give kind of a canned answer in this moment where it's like that it's within God's right to do that, but also like none of this, all this material world, that's all they're going to get.
Right.
That's all they're allowed. Like God's just said, sure, you can have that. I don't care. I'm getting my children with me. And then when I reveal my glory, you're done.
Yeah.
Like it's all over. But I think what you're getting at is like we're going to physically, it's hopeless. We're looking down. You look down. You know, you look into the future and see what path this not only our country but the whole world is taking. Transhumanism with AI integration.
The gays.
Everybody's going to be androgynous,
Yeah.
made from test tubes, some crap like that. We're going to have some hyper blend of communism and socialism, and you know, with a totalitarian aspect in the fascism realm, like just a hyper blend of all the isms,
Yeah.
except for autism, and it's not going to be fun.
Yeah.
That's coming, whether we like it or not. Yeah, it is hopeless in that sense, but I think God gave us a great typology of how to handle that in the sense of the apostles, in that every single one of them, except for John the Beloved, met a gruesome death. Absolutely gruesome death. But they endured that like joyfully because they knew that they had the ultimate gift of eternal salvation. And what is that? Reuniting with the Lord, experiencing his full glory. No veils, no turning your face or anything like that. The full glory of the Lord for eternity. And that's where that's what gave them hope. And that's what gives us hope. And so why does God do that? Why is God allowing the physical aspect to become so painful and so imbued with suffering? I kind of feel like it's still the maturation process.
Mm.
He's kind of he's slowly handing more and more of this place that's becoming desolate over to the powers given, and it's demonic and humans too.
Yeah.
Who crave the physical nature, who crave materialism, who crave hedonism and the pleasures of the flesh, giving them over to their vices. And then basically the image of a harvest is all throughout the New Testament in all four Gospels. Basically, he's harvesting, and it's going to sound crazy, but, harvesting souls.
Yeah.
Constantly harvesting. He's going to keep doing that until the soil is totally desolate, and then it's done. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so why does he allow that? Because he wants the most righteous of his children, the totally righteous of his children with him in the end. And this is just the process that's down the line from the fall of the garden that we had to take. It didn't have to be like this, but this is just the path that we chose with our own agency. Well, Adam and Eve chose unknowingly, but this is just the path that has to be taken.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. And so you can, that is hard to stomach, I think. And I think it's hard for God to watch in that things are just going to get even worse than they already are before the end comes. And so that means a lot of pain, a lot of suffering, and a lot of nihilism to wrestle with.
Yeah. No, I
That's canned. Yeah.
Sure, it is somewhat of a canned answer, and that may be something we revisit at a later time, because I think there's more probably to delve into there.
Yeah.
But one thing I do want to give some credence to, pay attention to, is the fact that I think you're right, like generally correct about that. I guess the one thing, and maybe this is me just like bitching about the system that I've dealt with, like the religious system that I've dealt with, and the moral systems I've dealt with as like a kid and an adult, is like I think you're correct, but what I think a lot of people run into there is, at least in most spiritual and religious circles, is you mentioned the fact that like things are kind of right, and the response you get from the establishment is, well, yeah, but it's going to be okay.
Right. Yeah.
And it's like this weird denial of acknowledgement of suffering. It's like the whole idea of like, my boss came in the other day. I had a pinched nerve because I did a pull-up, right? And I couldn't feel my left arm for a hot minute. He had a crick in his neck, and he was like, dude, it's not nearly as bad as yours. Like, yeah, it doesn't make what you're dealing with suck any less.
Right.
And like this whole idea that, well, it's going to be fine in the end, so
Right.
why aren't you joyful now? And like, sure, we have very good examples of people going through pain and suffering and being joyful, but also we have a lot of examples of people saying, damn it, this sucks, this is brutal. And I think what a lot of us, myself very much included, are guilty of in a lot of those circumstances is not simply allowing, maybe it's other people, maybe it's yourself, allowing yourself or those people to acknowledge the suck, right? Job sitting in ashes, scraping his skin with the shards of a broken piece of pottery, taking a coffee mug and scraping the broken edge across your skin and saying, damn it, this is like the refusal to, from a spiritual sense, just simply acknowledge that. That's almost portrayed as like blasphemous or somehow denying God his like sovereignty. It's not. It's simply an acceptance of the human condition in the place we're in right now. And I think that's okay.
Yes.
And it is fun to, it's super important, and we have to have that hope and that joy about what's coming after, certainly. And I think people, I'm not gonna say it's talked about too much, but I think people like to, because it's not nice, maybe, I don't know why, I've never understood why, ignore just the fact that things suck sometimes.
It's almost it's almost viewed as a sin if you bring up the suck.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know what you feel. Like.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, like I said, I mean, it's going to suck.
Yeah.
Nihilism you're going to have to, like, our generation and beyond, like the hopelessness of the material world is going to have to be wrestled with even deeper than we are now. Especially when the physical and the digital start to blend together, and you're in that weird limbo between what is and what was, and not knowing whether you're up or down.
Right.
You know, that kind of long story why I described it that way, but you know, I had this image while you're talking about that of, you know, the scene of Carol in The Walking Dead when she has those two little girls with her that she's trying to take care of in place of Sophie. She's got that weird little psychological thing of like, I didn't keep my daughter alive, so I'm going to protect these two little angels or whatnot. But one of the girls is absolutely deranged. And I don't know. Did y'all ever see this?
Never seen it. No.
Okay. Well, so zombie apocalypse. Okay. One of the girls is like, she's seen a lot of stuff. She's crazy. And she's fixated on the fact that people turn to zombies, whether they're bitten or when they die. And so she's one of the main characters, Carol, had a daughter previously who her character arc is feeling guilty for the fact that she couldn't protect her daughter. Her daughter gets bitten and turn into a zombie. That kind of
Okay.
thing. And so there's two little girls that are without parents, and she latches onto them and says she's going to raise them. Like I said, that one girl's crazy. So they're out in the garden playing or whatnot. She turns around, and the crazy girl, has basically, I forget if she stabs or kills the other little girl.
Jeez.
And it's just, there's this dichotomy being painted between like the pure innocent soul and the deranged traumatic individual, something like that,
Right.
and whatnot. And so Carol knows that this girl is going to she's broken. There's nothing she can do to change this little girl. And so she knows this girl likes a certain type of flower. She's like, hey, focus on this flower, whatnot, like takes her attention away from her. And then Carol shoots her in the back of the head. That's a very difficult thing to do.
Yeah.
But the reason I was thinking about that is because it's like, you have two options. You can turn and face your death, or you can try to distract yourself and hope that you don't know when you go.
Whoa.
And why are those your two options? Because your death is the ultimate test of your faith.
Yeah.
That's where push comes to shove, and that's when you basically everything we've been talking about, is either real or it isn't.
Right.
And so I think when you're not comfortable with that, you're going to be tempted to distract yourself in hopes that somebody just shoots you in the back of the head rather than turning and facing the bullet, that kind of thing.
Yes.
And so I think what you're pointing out is like we need to be okay with the fact, and wrapping all this up, but there is evil. It is coming for you, and it is going to ultimately try to you, so that you think you will be separated from the Lord. But I think the more you wrestle with that, the more cliche as it is, the hero's journey and whatnot, the more you turn and face death. That's when you start to realize where your faith is, where your hope is, and what you're made of.
Hell yeah. Dude, yeah, and that's so true. I hear so often, and I say this regularly too, like the whole idea of just like you make it home at the end of the day, you just want to distract yourself, Yeah. You're tired from X, Y, or Z, you just want to distract yourself. And all this, propaganda, the Mockingbird MK Ultra system that's doing all this stuff is just in an effort to distract yourself from a stark reality that you need to come to terms with. We all need to come to terms with, and we're much more peaceful and happy once we do.
Right.
The temporal nature of where we're at, and the fundamental glorification of fundamental, that's not the right word. The eventual glorification of where we're at once things, and so that's such a good analogy. Gosh. All right. Anything else, guys? I think that's a good place to end on. All right, well, folks, if you like the show, done a terrible job of segueing into an end for these lately. Tyler, thank you for doing this tonight. This was amazing. Guys, if you like the show, drop us a follow, like the stream, share it with your friends, share it with your family, share it with your preacher, see what they have to say. I'd be interested to hear their thoughts. If you like the show,
hey John, can you bleep every other word that Carson says, please?
That's about right.
I don't like that.
Yeah.
That's accurate. So if you
Have you read Galatians yet?
yes, I have.
Okay, read it again. Sorry.
Some good Bible humor there. I enjoyed that. So guys, if you like the show and you want more of it, go check out the Patreon. We have 5 convenient tiers, I believe, from the Theorist tier, which is $3. That will get you access to what is that? The Discord chat. If you just want to support the show, we've got a $5 tier where you're going to get most of your benefits. What do we have there, John? Remind me.
I mean, you can read it.
I really can't from here.
All the uncensored ups will go there. We'll be doing like post-show reactions for when we have guests on.
Right.
And like we'll edit that into our Patreon cut. So we'll kind of intro the show on the Patreon, because a lot of times when we do guest episodes, we maybe not get our thoughts in. So you'll get that there, and we'll give you access to join in on those live. You get a bonus episode per month, get some bonus streams per month. Obviously, the Discord chat. We'll send you some stickers. We got a bunch of new sticker designs, so check them out.
Yes, the sticker designs are pretty sweet, guys. I don't know if we posted pictures of those. We'll try to post pictures of those at some point. That way y'all can see them. And then we have from that all the way up to the bedtime tier, which
Get to take a nap with Carson.
has we haven't gone quite that far yet, but it does have all of the benefits, and we'll also think of you at bedtime. So if you're really interested, join the bedtime tier, and we'll think of you when we go to bed. We'll send you a bedtime text.
Ooh.
So yeah,
Can I get that since I'm grandfathered in?
I feel like you should. Yeah, I'll just send you a bedtime text thinking of you, Tyler.
It'll make me feel all nice and cozy.
Yeah, I'll say it in that voice too. I'll send you a voice message.
My wife will break my phone. You do that.
Who the
once.
hell is messaging you?
Carson, what's a real name?
Exactly. So yeah, check out the Patreon if you guys want more of the show. Best way to support the show too. So like and follow us on all the social media. We're at the Veritas Road everywhere, or the Veritas Road Pod on Twitter. So like and follow us all those places. Tune in. We're gonna try to stream this weekend. We haven't ironed out exactly when that's gonna be yet. We're also live every Tuesday for Touch Me Tuesdays, where we talk about the things that touch me too. Those are always a blast. I would not share those with your family. Share those with your friends, not your family, or they may never talk to you again. So, and then hopefully we'll be doing a show with Tim Constantine from 6th Century Pod sometime soon. We had to cancel
sick.
our first scheduled one, and because John and I are playing in a soccer league, and so we're gonna do another one soon. You want to join?
Mm-hmm.
All right, we'll get you the sign up.
Cool.
Yeah. All right, guys. That's all I got. Anything else, John? Did I miss anything?
If you're in Rumble Hangout, I think I'll send you somewhere. So
I forget about that every time. All right, Tyler. Thank you again. This
Thank
was
you
a blast.
both for having me. Always an honor.
It's always fun.
Yep.
All right, folks. We'll catch y'all next time. Bye.